At 2 in the morning, Ethan Cole opened his apartment door expecting a noise complaint or maybe another broken pipe. What he found instead was a woman in a designer dress with no shoes, mascara streaked down her face, standing in his doorway like she'd just escaped something terrible. She didn't ask for help, didn't explain, just looked at him with hollow eyes and said, "I need somewhere quiet to sit." He had no idea she owned the entire building, had no idea she was worth more money than he'd see in 10 lifetimes. All he knew was that she looked like she was about to shatter. If you want to see where this night takes them, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The knock came at 2:17 a.m. Ethan Cole was already awake, staring at the ceiling of his bedroom, mentally calculating whether he could stretch the grocery budget another 3 days or if he'd need to hit the food bank again. The knock was soft, hesitant, not the aggressive pounding of someone with a complaint or the rapid-fire tapping of a neighbor in crisis. He pushed himself up from the mattress, careful not to make noise. His son Mason was asleep in the next room, and the kid was a light sleeper. Had been ever since Sarah died. Some nights Mason would wake up 3-4 times, calling out for his mom before remembering she wasn't coming back. Ethan pulled on a shirt and padded barefoot to the door, glancing through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, 30s maybe. Dark hair pulled back in what might have been an elegant updo hours ago, but now hung loose and messy around her shoulders. Her dress was expensive. He could tell that much even through the fisheye lens. Black, sleek, probably cost more than his rent. But her feet were bare, and her face was a wreck of smeared makeup and exhaustion. He opened the door halfway, keeping the chain latched. "Can I help you?" She looked at him, and for a second he thought she might bolt. Her eyes were red-rimmed, unfocused. She swayed slightly, and he realized she might be drunk, or in shock. Hard to tell. "I need somewhere quiet to sit," she said. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been screaming or crying, probably both. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct told him to close the door, call building security, let someone else handle whatever this was. But something in her expression stopped him. It wasn't desperation. It was emptiness, like she'd run out of places to go and people to turn to. "Do you live in the building?" he asked. "I own the building." That threw him. He blinked, reassessing. Owned the building. Right. This was Victoria Hale. He'd seen her name on the paperwork when he signed his lease, seen her photo in the business section of the newspaper someone had left in the laundry room. CEO of Hale Industries. Billionaire. The kind of person who existed in a completely different universe than his own. "Miss Hale." "Victoria," she interrupted. "Please, just Victoria." He studied her for another moment, then unlatched the chain and opened the door. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, moving past him like a ghost. Her dress whispered against the doorframe. She left a faint trail of perfume, something expensive and floral that clashed with the smell of burnt toast and baby wipes that permanently lingered in his apartment. Ethan closed the door and locked it, already regretting this decision. She stood in the middle of his living room, taking it in. The sagging couch he'd bought off Craigslist. The coffee table covered in Mason's coloring books and broken crayons. The TV that only worked if you hit it on the left side. The walls plastered with finger paintings and construction paper crafts from daycare. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I shouldn't have come here. Where else were you going to go?" She didn't answer, just wrapped her arms around herself and stared at Mason's drawings, like they were written in a language she'd forgotten how to read. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "You want coffee?" "I don't want to be a bother. You knocked on my door at 2 in the morning. We're past that." A ghost of a smile flickered across her face and died. "Coffee would be good." He moved into the kitchen, a narrow galley space barely big enough for one person, let alone two. The coffee maker was old, a wedding gift from Sarah's aunt that had somehow survived 3 moves and countless mornings of abuse. He filled it with water and grounds, then leaned against the counter while it gurgled to life. Victoria had moved to the couch but hadn't sat down. She stood there, one hand resting on the back cushion, staring at a drawing Mason had done last week. A stick figure family, dad, kid, and a woman with wings labeled Mama in Heaven. "How old?" she asked. 4? The drawing's beautiful. He's got a good imagination. The coffee maker beeped. Ethan poured 2 mugs, added sugar to his, left hers black. He handed it to her and watched as she wrapped both hands around the chipped ceramic, like it was anchoring her to the earth. "Thank you," she said. "Don't mention it." She finally sat down, sinking into the couch with a sigh that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her chest. Ethan took the armchair across from her, the one with the duct tape on the armrest where Mason had tried to fix a tear with a crayon. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of sirens outside. Victoria stared into her coffee like it held answers. "I left a gala tonight," she said eventually. "Charity event. $5,000 a plate. Everyone dressed up, smiling, making small talk about quarterly earnings and vacation homes. I was supposed to give a speech." "Did you?" "I got halfway through and forgot what I was saying." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "Just stood there at the podium with 300 people staring at me, and I couldn't remember a single word. My assistant had to pull me off stage." "That's rough." "I fired her." Ethan raised his eyebrows. "For helping you?" "For looking at me like I was broken." Victoria took a sip of coffee, winced. "I told her to leave me alone. Told my driver to go home, walked out of the hotel and just kept walking. I don't even know how I ended up here." "This is your building." "I haven't been inside it in 2 years. I just signed the checks." She set the mug down on the coffee table, next to a half-finished puzzle of a cartoon dinosaur. Her hands were shaking. "I'm sorry," she said again. "I don't know why I'm telling you this. Maybe because I'm the only person who didn't pay $5,000 to listen." That got a real smile out of her. Small, fragile, but real. Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her. Up close, without the barrier of wealth and status, she looked human, tired, sad. The kind of sad that didn't come from one bad night, but from years of weight piling up until the foundation cracked. "You want to talk about it?" he asked. "I don't even know where to start." "Start anywhere." She looked at him, really looked at him, like she was trying to figure out if he meant it. Whatever she saw must have convinced her, because she took a breath and said, "I got married when I was 25. His name was David. Everyone said we were perfect together. Same schools, same social circles, same ambitions. We built Hale Industries from nothing, worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week. It was exhausting and exhilarating, and we were so sure we were building something that mattered." She paused, picking up the mug again just to have something to hold. "We didn't talk about kids. Not seriously. There was always another deal, another acquisition, another investor meeting. We told ourselves we'd get to it eventually, but then I got pregnant." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He knew where this was going. "I was 12 weeks along when I miscarried," Victoria continued, her voice flat now. Clinical, like she was reciting a quarterly report. "It happened in my office. I was on a conference call with Tokyo when I felt the cramping. I didn't even tell David until after I got back from the hospital. He was in meetings all day. I didn't want to interrupt." "Jesus," Ethan muttered. "We never talked about it. Not really. He sent flowers to the hospital, told me to take a few days off. But we had a product launch that week, and I didn't want to fall behind, so I went back to work. We both did. And we just moved on." "Did you?" She looked at him, and he saw the answer in her eyes. "No," she said quietly. "But I pretended I did. We both pretended. And the pretending turned into distance, and the distance turned into separate bedrooms, and eventually he stopped coming home at all. We finalized the divorce 3 years ago. Very civil, very amicable. He kept his shares of the company. I kept everything else. Everything except what you actually needed." She flinched like he'd slapped her. "I'm sorry," Ethan said quickly. "That was—" "No." Victoria shook her head. "You're right. I have 14 properties, a private jet, more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And I have nobody. I wake up every morning in a penthouse that looks like a magazine spread, and I can't remember the last time I had a conversation that wasn't about business. I can't remember the last time I felt anything that wasn't anger or exhaustion." Her voice cracked on the last word. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting for control. Ethan didn't say anything. Didn't offer platitudes or false comfort. He'd learned that lesson the hard way after Sarah died. Sometimes people didn't need you to fix it. They just needed you to sit with them in the mess. Victoria took a shaky breath and lowered her hand. "I stood in my penthouse tonight, getting ready for that gala, and I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, what's the point? Not in a dramatic way, just genuinely. What is the point of all this? The company, the money, the galas. I've spent 15 years building an empire, and for what? So I can die alone in a beautiful apartment. You're not going to die alone, Ethan said. How do you know? Because you're here. She frowned. I don't follow. You could have gone anywhere tonight, back to your penthouse, a hotel, one of your 14 properties. But you came here, knocked on the door of a stranger's apartment at 2 in the morning because some part of you knew you needed to be around people, real people, not assistants or board members or whoever the hell you usually surround yourself with. That tells me you're not as far gone as you think. Victoria stared at him. You don't know me. No, but I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning. Your wife? He nodded. Cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. She was gone 6 months later. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. Ethan drained his coffee, set the mug on the floor by his feet. I was an engineer before that. Good job, good salary, benefits. Sarah and I had plans, buy a house, have more kids, all the normal stuff. But when she got sick, I realized I was working 60 hours a week and barely seeing her or Mason. So I quit. Took a job doing maintenance here. Pays a fraction of what I used to make. And I'm basically invisible to everyone in the building, but I'm home when Mason needs me. I don't miss school plays or bedtime stories or the way he laughs when I make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Do you regret it? Leaving my career? Ethan shrugged. Sometimes. When the rent's due and I'm short, or when I see guys I used to work with posting about promotions on social media. But then Mason comes home from school and tells me about his day, or he falls asleep on my chest watching TV, and I think, no, this is what matters, not the job or the money, just being here. Victoria's eyes were wet. She wiped at them with the back of her hand, smearing what was left of her mascara. You make it sound easy. It's not. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. But it's the only thing that feels real anymore. She looked around the apartment again, seeing it differently now. The mess, the clutter, the worn furniture. It wasn't poverty. It was life. Lived in, imperfect human life. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. Do what? Be a person. I've spent so long being a CEO, being Victoria Hale, that I don't remember who I am underneath all of it. I don't have hobbies. I don't have friends. I haven't read a book that wasn't about business strategy in 5 years. I don't even know what I like anymore. Then figure it out. How? Start small. What did you like before the company? She thought about it. I used to paint. Terrible, amateur stuff, but I loved it. I'd spend hours in my college dorm just messing around with acrylics. When's the last time you painted? 15 years ago. Buy some paints. She laughed, but it was softer this time, less bitter. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I don't have time. I have board meetings and investor calls and 1,000 people depending on me to delegate. Victoria blinked. What? You've got assistants, right? Vice presidents? A whole team of people whose job is to keep the company running? Let them do their job. You don't have to micromanage every decision. But what if something goes wrong? Then it goes wrong. The company won't collapse because you took a day off to buy paints. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, frowned, considered. I don't know if I remember how to do this, she said finally. Nobody does. We're all just making it up as we go. A sound from the hallway made them both turn. Soft footsteps, the shuffle of bare feet on carpet. Mason appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes with one hand and clutching a stuffed giraffe with the other. He was wearing Spider-Man pajamas 2 sizes too big, hand-me-downs from Sarah's sister. Dad, he said, his voice thick with sleep. Hey, buddy, what are you doing up? I heard talking. Mason looked at Victoria, squinting. Who's that? This is Victoria. She's a friend. Mason padded into the living room, climbing onto the couch next to Victoria without hesitation. He peered up at her with curious eyes. Why are you sad? He asked. Victoria froze. I'm not. You look sad. Like Dad when he looks at pictures of Mama. Ethan winced. Mason, maybe... It's okay, Victoria said softly. She looked down at Mason, and something in her expression shifted, gentled. You're right. I am sad. Why? Because I made some mistakes, and now I'm trying to figure out how to fix them. Mason considered this with the seriousness only a 4-year-old could muster. Then he held up his giraffe. You can hold Jeffrey. He makes me feel better when I'm sad. Victoria took the giraffe carefully, like it was made of glass. Thank you. Do you want cocoa? Mason asked. Dad makes really good cocoa, and we can watch a movie. That helps too. Ethan stood up. I think Victoria needs to... I'd like that, Victoria said quietly. She looked at Ethan, her eyes shining. If that's okay. He saw it then, the crack in her armor, the place where all the grief and loneliness had been locked away for years, finally breaking open because a 4-year-old offered her a stuffed giraffe and cocoa. Yeah, Ethan said. That's okay. He went to the kitchen and made hot chocolate while Mason chattered to Victoria about his favorite movies and why giraffes were better than elephants. By the time Ethan came back with 3 mugs, Mason had pulled out his collection of DVDs and was explaining the plot of Toy Story in exhaustive detail. They ended up on the couch together, Mason wedged between Ethan and Victoria, watching Woody and Buzz flicker across the old TV. Victoria held her cocoa in both hands, sipping slowly, and somewhere around the time Andy's toys were escaping Sid's house, Ethan saw her shoulders relax. Mason fell asleep 20 minutes in, his head lolling against Victoria's arm. She looked down at him, then at Ethan. He's sweet, she whispered. He's a good kid. Does he remember her, your wife? Not really. He was 2 when she died. He's got this idea of her from photos and stories, but he doesn't remember the sound of her voice or the way she'd sing him to sleep. Sometimes that kills me. Other times I think maybe it's easier for him this way. Do you talk about her? All the time. I don't want him to forget she existed, even if he can't remember her. Victoria looked back at Mason, her expression unreadable. I think I forgot I existed, she said quietly. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being a person and became a brand. Victoria Hale, CEO. The woman on the magazine covers, the keynote speaker, the success story. And I convinced myself that was enough. That if I just kept building and winning and succeeding, I'd fill whatever was missing inside me. Did it work? She smiled sadly. What do you think? The movie played on. Woody and Buzz made peace. Andy's family moved to a new house. The credits rolled and Ethan carefully extracted Mason from the couch, carrying him back to his bedroom. When he returned, Victoria was standing by the window, looking out at the city. It's almost dawn, she said. Ethan joined her. The sky was starting to lighten, a pale gray creeping across the horizon. Below, the city was waking up, delivery trucks rumbling past, lights flickering on in windows, the first early risers heading to work. I should go, Victoria said. You don't have to. I know, but I think I need to. She turned to face him. Thank you for the coffee and the cocoa and for not calling security. Any time. She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, held it out to him. If you ever need anything, a better apartment, a job, whatever, call me. Ethan looked at the card but didn't take it. I don't need anything. Everyone needs something. Not from you, she frowned. I'm trying to help. I know, but I didn't let you in because I wanted something from you. I let you in because you needed help. There's a difference. Victoria stared at him, and for a moment he thought he'd offended her. Then she laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. You're an unusual man, Ethan Cole. I'm just a guy who makes decent coffee. She tucked the card back into her purse. Well, thank you anyway. He walked her to the door, unlocked it. She stepped into the hallway, barefoot, still holding her shoes. Then she turned back. Your son asked me if I was okay, she said. And I lied. I told him I was sad because I made mistakes. But that's not the whole truth. What is? I'm sad because I spent 15 years running away from feeling anything. And tonight, sitting on your couch, drinking cocoa with a 4-year-old, I felt something. And it terrified me. Ethan nodded. That means you're still alive. She smiled, fragile but real. I guess it does. She walked down the hallway, her bare feet silent on the carpet. Ethan watched until she turned the corner toward the elevator, then closed the door and locked it. He stood there for a moment, processing the last few hours. Then he went to the kitchen, washed the mugs, and put them away. Outside, the sun was rising. Soon Mason would wake up, and they'd have breakfast, and Ethan would walk him to daycare before heading to work. The normal routine. The small, ordinary life that suddenly felt a little less small. He turned off the kitchen light, then stopped. Turned it back on. A signal in the darkness, just in case someone else was out there looking for a place to sit. Mason woke up at 7:30 like clockwork, stumbling into the kitchen with his hair sticking up in 3 different directions. Ethan was already there, cracking eggs into a bowl, the coffee maker gurgling its second pot of the morning. "Morning, bud." Mason climbed onto his usual chair, dragging Jeffrey the giraffe with him. "Where's the sad lady?" "She went home." "Is she still sad?" Ethan whisked the eggs, added milk. "Probably, but maybe a little less than before." "Because of the cocoa?" "Because of you, actually." Mason thought about this, swinging his legs under the table. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Can sad people come over more?" Ethan paused mid-whisk. "What do you mean?" "I liked helping her. It felt good, like when I help you fix stuff." Something tightened in Ethan's chest. He poured the eggs into the pan, watched them sizzle. "You've got a good heart, Mason. Your mom would be proud of that." "Do you think Mama helps sad people in heaven?" "I think she helps whoever needs it, just like you." They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, Mason working his way through scrambled eggs and toast while narrating an elaborate story about Jeffrey's adventures in space. Ethan listened with half his attention, the other half still stuck on Victoria Hale standing in his living room at 3 in the morning, looking like her whole world had collapsed. He dropped Mason at daycare at 8:45. Endured the usual chaos of 24-year-olds running in circles while their parents tried to escape, then headed to the maintenance office in the building's basement. His supervisor, Rick, was already there, feet up on the desk, scrolling through sports scores on his phone. "You look like hell," Rick said without looking up. "Didn't sleep much." "Hot date?" "Something like that." Rick snorted. "Right, and I'm dating a supermodel." He finally glanced up. "Got a job for you. Penthouse level. Pipe leak in one of the empty units." Ethan grabbed his toolbox. "Which one?" "PH7. Should be unlocked." The elevator ride to the penthouse level felt longer than usual. Ethan watched the numbers climb, thinking about Victoria's bare feet on his carpet, the way her hands shook around the coffee mug, Mason offering her his giraffe like it was the most natural thing in the world. The penthouse hallway was different from the rest of the building. Thick carpet, art on the walls, the kind of silence that only came with serious money. He found PH7 and let himself in. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that probably cost more than his car, a kitchen with appliances he didn't even recognize, and completely empty of any personality. No photos, no books, no signs that anyone actually lived here. He found the leak in the bathroom, a slow drip from the sink's supply line. Easy fix. He was tightening the connection when he heard the front door open. "Hello?" He recognized the voice immediately. Ethan straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans, and walked back to the living room. Victoria stood in the doorway, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked more like a college student than a billionaire CEO. The surprise on her face when she saw him was genuine. "Ethan?" "Ms. Hale." "Victoria," she corrected automatically. Then, "What are you doing here?" "Fixing your sink. You own this unit too?" "I own all the penthouses. This one's been empty for a year." She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I thought I'd see if it needed any work before listing it." "Just a loose supply line. Already fixed." "Thank you." They stood there, the morning light streaming through the windows, neither quite sure what to say. Last night felt like a fever dream, intimate and raw and slightly unreal. Now, in the harsh clarity of day, they were strangers again. "How are you?" Ethan asked finally. "Tired. You?" "Same." Victoria moved to the windows, looking out at the city. "I didn't sleep, just sat in my apartment, thinking." "About?" "Everything. The company. The last 15 years. What you said about being present." She turned to face him. "I called my assistant this morning." "The one you fired?" "I rehired her, with a raise and an apology." Victoria's mouth quirked. She cried. "I'm not sure if it was relief or shock." "Probably both. I also cleared my schedule for the next 2 weeks. Ethan raised his eyebrows. Seriously? Delegated everything to my VPs. Told them not to call unless the building's literally on fire. She laughed, but it sounded nervous. I have no idea what to do with myself now. You could start with those paints. I went online at 6 this morning and ordered supplies. They'll be here tomorrow. She shook her head. I felt ridiculous, a 30-year-old woman buying beginner's art supplies like I'm 12. Everyone starts somewhere. I know, it's just strange. I'm used to being good at things, and I know I'm going to be terrible at this. That's kind of the point, she smiled. I suppose it is. Ethan picked up his toolbox. Well, your sink's fixed. I should get back to work. Wait, Victoria crossed the room quickly. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you let me in last night? You didn't know me. I could have been drunk or dangerous or completely insane. Ethan considered this. You looked like you needed help, and I know what it's like to need help and have nobody there. When Sarah was sick, he nodded. We had friends at first. People brought casseroles, sent cards, promised to visit. But cancer's a long game, and most people can't handle watching someone die slowly. By the end, it was just me and Sarah and Mason, and after she died, even fewer people stuck around. Grief makes people uncomfortable. I'm sorry. Don't be. I learned who actually mattered. Turned out it was a pretty short list. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Go ahead. I don't have a list, short or otherwise. I have business associates and employees and people who want things from me, but I don't have friends. Not real ones. What about your ex-husband? She laughed bitterly. David sends a card on my birthday. Very polite, very distant. We haven't had an actual conversation in 2 years. Family? My parents retired to Costa Rica. We talk maybe 3 times a year. I have a brother in Seattle, but we haven't been close since high school. She wrapped her arms around herself. Last night, sitting on your couch, was the most genuine human interaction I've had in longer than I can remember. That's pretty sad. I know. Ethan set down his toolbox. You want to grab coffee? Victoria blinked. What? Coffee. There's a decent place 2 blocks over. Assuming billionaire CEOs drink regular coffee and not just whatever costs $50 a cup. I drink regular coffee. Then let's go. She stared at him like he'd suggested they rob a bank. You want to have coffee with me? You just said you don't have friends. Consider this practice. I'm your landlord. Technically, you're my employer. I work maintenance in your building. That makes it worse. Why? Because there's a power dynamic. I could fire you. Ethan shrugged. Then don't. Come on, Victoria. It's just coffee, not a business merger. She hesitated, then grabbed her purse. Okay, but I'm buying. We'll see about that. They took the stairs instead of the elevator, Victoria's expensive shoes clicking on concrete while Ethan's work boots scuffed beside her. Outside, the morning was bright and cold, the kind of October day that promised winter wasn't far off. The coffee shop was called The Daily Grind, a hole-in-the-wall place run by a Vietnamese couple who knew Ethan's order by heart. He held the door for Victoria, and they stepped into the smell of roasted beans and fresh pastries. Ethan, Mrs. Nguyen beamed from behind the counter. The usual? Please. And whatever she wants. Victoria studied the menu board. Just a black coffee. Medium. No pastry? Mrs. Nguyen looked scandalized. I just made banh mi. Fresh this morning. I'm not... Get the banh mi, Ethan said. Trust me. Victoria relented. They found a table by the window and Mrs. Nguyen brought over their order herself, chatting rapidly in Vietnamese before bustling back to the kitchen. She thinks you're too skinny, Ethan translated. I didn't understand a word she said, and somehow I still knew that. Victoria picked up the sandwich, took a careful bite, then her eyes widened. Oh, wow. Told you. They ate in silence for a while, watching people hurry past on the sidewalk. Office workers, students, delivery drivers, the whole messy parade of normal life. I used to come to places like this, Victoria said quietly, before the company took off. David and I would find these little restaurants, try new foods, just walk around the city. We were broke and exhausted and completely happy. What changed? We got what we wanted. Success, money, recognition. Turns out that was the worst thing that could have happened to us. You think you were happier broke? I think we were happier when we still had something to chase. Once we got it, we didn't know what to do with ourselves. She took another bite of sandwich. Do you ever miss your old job? Sometimes. I liked the work, liked solving problems, building things, but I don't miss the hours or the stress or constantly chasing the next promotion. Do you think you'll go back to it? Eventually? Maybe when Mason's older. Right now he needs me more than I need a career. Victoria set down her sandwich. Can I ask you something personal? Haven't you already? She smiled. Fair point. But this is different. Last night, when I was sitting in your apartment, I kept thinking about your son. How he offered me his giraffe without hesitation, like that was the obvious thing to do when someone's sad. And I wondered, how do you do that? Do what? Raise a kid who's that kind, that open. My childhood was all private schools and structured activities and lessons about networking and presentation. Nobody taught me how to just be kind to strangers. Ethan leaned back in his chair. I don't know if I'm doing anything special. Mason saw you were upset and he wanted to help. Kids are naturally empathetic before we teach them not to be. That's depressing. Little bit, yeah. He sipped his coffee. But I try not to overthink it. When Mason asks questions, I answer honestly. When he wants to help, I let him. When he makes mistakes, we talk about them. That's about it. You make it sound simple. It's not. I screw up constantly. Last week I forgot it was pajama day at school and Mason cried the whole way there because all the other kids were in their PJs and he was in regular clothes. I felt like the worst father on the planet. What did you do? Went home, grabbed his Spider-Man pajamas, brought them to school. He changed in the bathroom and was fine, but I still felt terrible. Victoria laughed. That's actually kind of sweet. That's parenthood, constant low-level guilt punctuated by moments of terror. Sounds exhausting. It is. But it's also the best thing I've ever done. Ethan finished his coffee. What about you? Did you ever think about trying again? After the miscarriage. Victoria's expression shuddered. No, David and I never talked about it. And after the divorce, the idea of dating someone new, trying to build that kind of relationship again, I couldn't imagine it. Why not? Because I'm not good at the kind of vulnerability that requires. I can negotiate billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but the idea of letting someone see me the way you saw me last night? Terrifying. I hate to break it to you, but I'm someone. And you let me see you. That was different. That was desperation. Maybe. But you're still here. She looked at him, and he saw the fear behind her eyes. Fear of being known, of being seen, of admitting she needed people. It was easier to stay behind the walls she'd built, to keep everyone at a professional distance where feelings couldn't hurt her. I don't know how to do this, Victoria said quietly. Do what? Be a person who has friends, who sits in coffee shops and talks about real things instead of quarterly earnings. You're doing it right now. I feel like I'm faking it. Everyone feels like they're faking it. That's the secret nobody tells you. Mrs. Nguyen appeared with the coffee pot, refilling their mugs without asking. She said something to Ethan in Vietnamese, winked at Victoria, and walked away. What did she say? Victoria asked. She likes you, says you have sad eyes but a good face. That's oddly specific. She's very perceptive. They talked for another hour, the conversation drifting from topic to topic without agenda. Victoria told him about growing up in Connecticut, about her father who built shopping malls and her mother who hosted charity luncheons. Ethan told her about his college years, about meeting Sarah at a party and knowing within 5 minutes that he'd marry her. Was it really that fast? Victoria asked. Yeah, she was arguing with some guy about engineering ethics, and she was destroying him. I just stood there thinking, that's the smartest person I've ever met, and I need to know her. Did you tell her that? Eventually. Took me 3 weeks to work up the courage to ask her out. What did she say? She said she'd been waiting for me to get over myself. Ethan smiled at the memory. We were married 2 years later. That's beautiful. It was. Until it wasn't. He looked out the window. Cancer doesn't care about love stories. It just takes and takes until there's nothing left to take. Victoria reached across the table, hesitated, then touched his hand briefly. I'm sorry. Me too. They left the coffee shop around 11, stepping back into the cold morning. Victoria pulled her coat tighter. I I should get back, she said. I have some things to take care of. Sure, thanks for coffee. You paid. Did I? Ethan grinned. Must have forgotten. She shook her head, but she was smiling. You're impossible. So I've been told. They stood there on the sidewalk, people flowing around them, neither quite ready to leave. Can I ask you something? Victoria said finally. Another question? You're on a roll. Do you regret it, letting me in last night? Ethan thought about it. No. Do you regret knocking? No. She paused. Actually, that's not true. Part of me regrets it. The part that's terrified of what happens next. What do you think happens next? I don't know. That's what scares me. Then don't think about it. Just take it one day at a time. She looked at him, and something in her expression softened. You make it sound easy. It's not, but it's better than the alternative. Victoria nodded slowly. Then, on impulse, she pulled out her phone. Give me your number. Why? Because I might need to ask you more questions, and showing up at your door at 2 a.m. is probably not sustainable. Ethan recited his number and watched her type it in. His phone buzzed a second later with a text. This is Victoria. Don't delete this. Wasn't planning on it, he said. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. I'll see you around, Ethan Cole. See you around, Victoria Hale. She walked away and he watched until she turned the corner, then headed back to the building. Rick was waiting in the maintenance office, looking annoyed. Where the hell have you been? That was a 15-minute job. Got complicated. A leaky pipe got complicated? Something like that. Rick narrowed his eyes. You're acting weird. I'm fine. You're never fine. You're either tired or stressed or worried about your kid, but you're never fine. Ethan grabbed his toolbox. What's next on the list? 3rd floor. Some guy's toilet won't flush. Glamorous. He spent the rest of the day dealing with the usual chaos. Broken appliances, stuck windows, a mysterious smell in the laundry room that turned out to be a dead mouse. Normal work. Normal problems. But his phone felt heavy in his pocket, and he kept thinking about Victoria sitting across from him in the coffee shop, admitting she didn't know how to have friends. He picked up Mason at 5, stopped at the grocery store for dinner supplies, and made it home by 6. They ate spaghetti at the coffee table while watching cartoons, and Mason talked non-stop about his day. We learned about dinosaurs, Mason announced, twirling noodles on his fork. Did you know some dinosaurs had feathers? I did not know that. And they're related to birds, so when we eat chicken, we're kind of eating dinosaurs. That's a little dark, bud. Mason grinned. I told Emma at school, and she cried. Mason. What? It's true. After dinner, they built a blanket fort in the living room, and Mason insisted they needed to defend it from space aliens. Ethan played along, making laser gun noises, while Mason shrieked with laughter. They were in the middle of an intense battle when Ethan's phone buzzed. He checked it during a lull in the fighting. A text from an unknown number. I bought the paints. They're sitting in my apartment and I'm too scared to open them. Is that ridiculous? Ethan smiled and typed back, not ridiculous, just open the box. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then, what if I'm terrible? You will be. That's the point. Another pause. Then, thank you for coffee and for not making me feel stupid. Anytime. He set the phone down and found Mason watching him. Who's that? A friend. The sad lady? Yeah. Is she still sad? A little, but she's working on it. Mason absorbed this, then handed Ethan a pillow. She can come fight aliens with us if she wants. Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. I'll let her know. They played until Mason's eyes started drooping. Then Ethan carried him to bed, read 3 stories, and sang the same off-key lullaby Sarah used to sing. Mason was asleep before the 2nd verse. Back in the living room, Ethan collapsed on the couch and stared at his phone. He thought about texting Victoria again, then decided against it. She needed space to figure things out, and he needed to figure out what he was doing, letting a billionaire CEO into his life like this. His phone buzzed. Victoria. I opened the paints, set everything up on my dining table. Now I'm staring at a blank canvas and have no idea what to do. Ethan. Paint something that makes you happy. Victoria. I don't know what makes me happy anymore. He thought about that for a long moment, then typed, then paint something that made you happy once. Start there. The three dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, okay, I'll try. He waited, but nothing else came through. He set the phone down and turned on the TV, found a basketball game, watched without really seeing it. Around midnight, another text. I painted for 3 hours. It's terrible, like objectively awful. But I didn't think about work once, so I guess that's something. Ethan smiled. That's everything. Victoria. Can I see you again? Not as landlord and employee, just as people. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. This was dangerous territory. Getting involved with someone like Victoria Hale was asking for complications he didn't need. Different worlds, different lives, different everything. But he thought about her standing in his doorway at 2 a.m, barefoot and broken. Thought about her laughing in the coffee shop. Thought about Mason offering her his giraffe like kindness was the simplest thing in the world. He typed, coffee tomorrow, same place, 10 a.m. Victoria. I'll be there. Ethan set the phone down and leaned back into the couch. Outside, the city hummed its usual night song. Inside, his apartment was quiet except for the soft sound of Mason breathing in the next room. He thought about Sarah, about the life they'd planned and lost, about the way grief had hollowed him out and how he'd learned to live inside that hollow space, about Mason's laugh and the way he saw the world as something fundamentally good. And he thought about Victoria, alone in her penthouse, painting terrible pictures and trying to remember what happiness felt like. Maybe this was a mistake. Probably it was a mistake. But maybe mistakes were just another word for trying, and trying was better than hiding. He got up, checked on Mason one more time, then went to the kitchen. The light was still on from this morning. He left it burning, just in case. Victoria was already at the coffee shop when Ethan arrived the next morning, sitting at the same table by the window. She had a laptop open in front of her, but she wasn't looking at it, just staring out at the street with a cup of coffee going cold in her hands. You're early, Ethan said, sliding into the chair across from her. She jumped slightly, then smiled. I couldn't sleep. Figured I might as well be productive. Checking emails? Trying not to. I opened my inbox this morning and had 400 unread messages. Closed it immediately. 400? That's actually low for me. Usually it's closer to 1,000. She closed the laptop. I'm learning to let things go. It's harder than I thought. Mrs. Nguyen appeared with coffee for Ethan and a fresh cup for Victoria, along with 2 plates of bon bao. You both too skinny, she announced. Eat. Victoria looked at the steamed buns, then at Ethan. Does she always do this? Every single time. Just accept it. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, watching the morning rush. Students heading to class, parents dragging sleepy kids to school, delivery trucks double parked and blocking traffic. So, Ethan said finally, how's the painting going? Victoria groaned. Terrible. I spent another 2 hours on it last night and somehow made it worse. What are you painting? I don't even know. It started as a landscape, then turned into something abstract, and now it just looks like I spilled paint on a canvas and called it art. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. Or maybe I'm just bad at this. You've been painting for 2 days. Give yourself a break. She picked at her bon bao. I know. It's just frustrating. I'm used to being competent, and this reminds me that I've spent 15 years getting really good at one thing and completely neglecting everything else. So get good at other things. You've got time. Do I? Victoria looked at him. I'm 30 years old. Most people have hobbies by now. Friends, relationships, some kind of life outside work. And I have nothing. You have a company worth billions of dollars, which doesn't mean anything when I'm sitting alone in my apartment at midnight wondering what the point of it all is. Ethan took a sip of coffee. You want my honest opinion? Always. Stop trying to fix everything at once. You're approaching this like it's a business problem. Like if you just work hard enough and follow the right strategy, you'll suddenly have a perfect life. Isn't that how it works? No. Life's messy. You screw up, you try again, you screw up differently. There's no quarterly plan for becoming a person. Victoria was quiet for a moment. My therapist said something similar. You have a therapist? I started seeing one 3 days ago. After that night in your apartment, I realized I couldn't keep doing this alone. That's good. She thinks I'm using work to avoid dealing with grief, about the miscarriage, the divorce, everything I've been shoving down for years. Is she right? Victoria looked out the window. Probably. I told her about that night, about showing up at your door. She asked why I chose your apartment instead of anyone else's. What did you say? That I didn't choose. I just walked until I couldn't walk anymore and ended up in front of your door. And? And she said that's interesting. That maybe part of me knew I needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere real. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Your therapist sounds smart. She is. And expensive, but worth it, I think. Victoria finally took a bite of her bun bao. She wants me to start identifying what I actually want, not what I think I should want, or what makes sense strategically, what I genuinely want. Have you figured it out? Not really. Every time I try to think about it, my brain goes blank, or I start thinking about work and have to force myself to stop. Maybe that's your answer right there. What do you mean? You want to stop thinking about work all the time. That's a start. She smiled. I suppose it is. They finished breakfast and walked back to the building together. The morning was crisp and bright, leaves starting to turn orange and red in the small park across the street. Victoria had her hands shoved in her coat pockets, and for once she looked almost relaxed. Can I ask you something? She said. You ask a lot of questions. I'm curious about people. I just usually don't have time to indulge it. She glanced at him. What do you do when you're not working or taking care of Mason? Ethan thought about it. Not much, honestly. Read sometimes. Watch basketball. I used to run, but I haven't had energy for that in a while. Do you miss it, running? Yeah. It was good for clearing my head, but between work and Mason and everything else, there's no time. What if you made time? With what? I'm already stretched pretty thin. Victoria stopped walking. What if I watched Mason? Ethan stared at her. What? I have 2 weeks off, nothing to do, and you said yourself I need practice being around people. Kids count as people. You want to babysit my 4-year-old so I can go running? Why not? Because you're a CEO. You don't babysit. I'm a person who happens to run a company. And right now, I'm a person with too much free time and no idea what to do with it. She met his eyes. Let me help, please. Ethan wanted to say no, wanted to point out all the reasons this was a terrible idea. But he saw the hope in her expression, the need to be useful, and he remembered what it felt like to be lost and desperate for connection. Okay, he said finally, but you're going to regret this. I doubt that. You clearly haven't spent much time around 4-year-olds. She laughed. How bad can it be? The answer, it turned out, was very bad. Victoria showed up at Ethan's apartment that Saturday morning wearing designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, looking like she'd stepped out of a catalog. Mason took one look at her and declared that they were going to play dinosaurs, which involved a lot of roaring and running in circles. Are you sure about this? Ethan asked, lacing up his running shoes. Absolutely. We'll be fine. He's had breakfast, but he'll want a snack around 10. Goldfish are in the cabinet. If he gets too wild, put on a movie. And if anything happens, Ethan, go run. We'll be okay. He left reluctantly, looking back twice before he made it to the elevator. Outside, the morning was perfect for running. Cool, clear, the city just waking up. He started slow, letting his muscles remember what they were supposed to do. It felt good. Better than good. For the first time in months, his head cleared. No worrying about bills or Mason's cough or whether he was screwing up as a parent. Just the rhythm of feet hitting pavement, breath in and out, the world sliding past. He ran for an hour, taking his old route through the park and back. By the time he returned to the building, he was sweating and sore and more relaxed than he'd felt in years. He opened his apartment door to chaos. Mason was sitting on the couch, covered in what looked like chocolate pudding, laughing hysterically. Victoria was on the floor, also covered in pudding, her expensive sweater completely ruined. There was pudding on the walls, pudding on the TV, pudding in places Ethan didn't even know pudding could reach. What happened? He asked. Victoria looked up at him, and he saw she was laughing too. We made pudding. It got a little out of hand. A little? Mason wanted to see if pudding could fly, so we tested the hypothesis. And? It can. Surprisingly well, actually. Mason ran over, leaving chocolate footprints on the carpet. Dad, we did science. Victoria said that's what you call it when you test stuff. Ethan looked around his destroyed living room, then at Victoria sitting on the floor looking happier than he'd ever seen her, and started laughing. "You're cleaning this up, obviously. And you're buying me new pudding. I'll buy you a lifetime supply." They spent the next hour cleaning, Mason helping by spreading the mess around while Ethan and Victoria did actual work. Victoria had taken off her sweater and was scrubbing the wall in just a tank top, her hair falling out of its ponytail, completely absorbed in the task. "You're really bad at babysitting," Ethan said. "I know. It's great." "How is this great? Your sweater's destroyed." "I hated that sweater. Cost $800 and it was itchy." She attacked a particularly stubborn pudding stain. "This is the most fun I've had in years. Getting covered in chocolate pudding. Being terrible at something and not caring. When's the last time you did something badly and didn't beat yourself up over it?" Ethan thought about it. "I honestly can't remember." "Exactly. We spend so much time trying to be perfect that we forget how to just be." She sat back on her heels. "Mason doesn't care that I don't know what I'm doing. He just wants someone to play with. It's liberating." Mason wandered over, now wearing clean clothes but still with chocolate in his hair. "Victoria, can you come back tomorrow?" "I don't know, buddy. That's up to your dad." "Please, Dad. She's fun. And she lets me do science." Ethan looked at Victoria, saw the question in her eyes. "We'll see." Mason whooped and ran off to find Jeffrey the giraffe. Victoria stood up, wiping her hands on her ruined jeans. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "You're the one who watched him. For letting me. For trusting me with something that matters. He's just a kid." "He's your kid. That's different." They finished cleaning and Victoria left around noon, still wearing her pudding-stained clothes. Ethan watched her go, then turned to find Mason watching him. "Dad?" "Yeah, bud?" "Do you like Victoria?" "She's nice. Why?" Mason shrugged. "You smile when she's here. You don't smile much anymore." That hit harder than Ethan expected. "I smile. Not like that. Not like you did with Mama." Ethan knelt down, pulling Mason into a hug. "I'm sorry, buddy. I know I've been sad a lot. It's okay to be sad. You said so." Mason pulled back, looking serious. "But it's okay to be happy too. Mama would want you to be happy." "When did you get so smart?" "I was always smart. You just forget sometimes." Ethan laughed and ruffled his hair. "Fair enough. You want lunch? Can we have pudding?" "Absolutely not." Victoria started coming over regularly after that. Not every day, but a few times a week. Sometimes she'd watch Mason while Ethan ran errands. Other times she'd just show up with coffee and they'd sit on the couch while Mason built elaborate block towers. She was getting better at the whole being a person thing. Still awkward sometimes, still overthinking everything, but more relaxed. She'd started painting regularly, showed up one day with photos of her work on her phone. "They're still terrible," she said, scrolling through images of abstract landscapes that looked like they'd been painted by a talented drunk person. "But I'm getting worse in new and interesting ways. That's progress. My therapist thinks I'm using painting to work through suppressed emotions." "Are you?" "Maybe. I painted this one after a particularly rough session where we talked about the miscarriage." She showed him a canvas covered in dark blues and grays, violent brushstrokes that looked like a storm. She asked how it felt to paint it, and I said it felt like drowning, and she said that's good, that I need to feel it instead of running from it. Ethan studied the painting. "It's powerful. It's depressing. Art can be both," she smiled. "You're very generous with your compliments." "I'm serious. There's real emotion in this. That's more important than technical skill." "You sound like my therapist." "I'll take that as a compliment." They were quiet for a moment, Mason playing on the floor between them. Then Victoria said, "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "I've started thinking about dating again. Nothing serious, just the idea of it, and it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because I don't know how to be vulnerable with someone. The thought of going on a date, making small talk, pretending to be interesting, I'd rather negotiate a merger." "You don't have to pretend anything. Easy for you to say. You're naturally likable." Ethan laughed. "I'm really not. I'm just too tired to put up a front." "That's what makes you likable. You're genuine. I've spent so long being Victoria Hale, CEO, that I don't know how to just be Victoria." "You're doing it right now." She looked at him. "Am I?" "Yeah. You're sitting on a secondhand couch in sweatpants talking about your feelings. That's about as genuine as it gets. I like these sweatpants. They're comfortable. You should buy more. I bought 6 pairs. My housekeeper thinks I'm having a breakdown. Are you? Probably. But it's a good breakdown, the kind where you realize your life is empty and decide to do something about it. Mason wandered over, climbing onto the couch between them. What's a breakdown? It's when grown-ups realize they need to make changes, Victoria said. Oh, Dad has those. Ethan raised his eyebrows. I do? Yeah, you get really quiet and stare at stuff. Then you make spaghetti. That's surprisingly accurate. Victoria laughed. Everyone needs a coping mechanism. Yours is carbs. Mine was building a billion-dollar company. Yours is more impressive, but less comforting than spaghetti. A few days later, Victoria called him at work, her voice tight. Can you talk? Yeah, what's wrong? I ran into David, my ex-husband. He was having lunch at a restaurant near my office, and I didn't see him until it was too late to leave. How did it go? Terrible. He introduced me to his new girlfriend. She's 26 and works in marketing and kept calling me a girl boss like that's a compliment. Ouch. And David looked so happy, genuinely happy, like the weight of our marriage just lifted off him the second we signed the papers. Her voice cracked. And I wanted to be happy for him. I really did. But instead I just felt hollow. Where are you now? Sitting in my car in a parking garage. I was supposed to go back to the office, but I can't face anyone right now. Ethan checked the time. I get off in an hour. You want to meet somewhere? You don't have to. I know, but I want to. Where can I meet you? She gave him an address, and an hour later, he found her sitting on a bench in a small park, staring at nothing. She looked exhausted. Hey, he said, sitting down beside her. Hey. They sat in silence for a while. Then Victoria said, I thought I was over him. The divorce was 3 years ago. I barely think about him anymore. But seeing him today, seeing him happy without me, it brought everything back. What did it bring back? The feeling that I'm fundamentally unlovable, that there's something broken in me that makes people leave. She wiped at her eyes. I know that's not rational. I know the marriage failed because we both let it fail, but rational doesn't make it hurt less. No, it doesn't. Do you ever feel that way? After Sarah, Ethan considered this. Sometimes. Not that I'm unlovable, but that I had my chance at happiness and lost it. Like I used up my quota of good things, and now I'm just running out the clock. That's bleak. It's grief. Bleak comes with the territory. Victoria leaned back against the bench. My therapist says I need to forgive myself. For the miscarriage, for the divorce, for all the choices I made that led me here. But I don't know how to do that. Neither do I. That's comforting in a weird way. We're both a mess. Might as well be a mess together. She smiled. Is that what we're doing? Being a mess together? Seems like it. They sat there as the afternoon faded into evening, talking about nothing and everything. Victoria told him about her brother in Seattle, how they used to be close as kids but drifted apart when she got obsessed with work. Ethan told her about his parents, both gone now, and how he wished they'd lived long enough to meet Mason. Do you think you'll ever get married again? Victoria asked. I don't know. Maybe. If I meet someone who makes sense. What would make sense? Someone who understands that Mason comes first. Someone who doesn't need me to be anything other than what I am. That's a low bar. You'd be surprised how many people can't clear it. Ethan looked at her. What about you? I can't imagine it. Getting that close to someone again, risking that much. It seems impossible. 5 weeks ago, you couldn't imagine having friends. This is different. Is it? She didn't answer. They got dinner at a taco truck, eating on the same bench while the park emptied around them. Victoria talked about her therapist's suggestion that she reconnect with her brother, maybe visit him in Seattle. I don't know if he'd want to see me, she said. We haven't had a real conversation in years. Only one way to find out. What if he says no? Then you tried. That's more than you're doing now. She picked at her taco. You make everything sound simple. It's not simple, but it's usually simpler than we make it. My therapist says the same thing. Your therapist is wise. And expensive. Don't forget expensive. Ethan walked her back to her car, and they stood in the parking garage under flickering fluorescent lights. "Thank you," Victoria said, "for dropping everything to sit with me. That's what friends do." "Is that what we are? Friends?" "I think so. Unless you've got a better word for it." She smiled. "Friends works." He watched her drive away, then caught the bus home. Mason was with his sister-in-law tonight, a rare overnight visit, which meant Ethan had the apartment to himself. He should have been relaxed, grateful for the quiet. Instead, he felt restless. He tried watching TV, gave up after 10 minutes, tried reading, couldn't focus. Finally, he grabbed his phone and texted Victoria. "You get home okay?" Her response came immediately. "Yes, thank you again for today." "Anytime." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think I'm broken?" Ethan stared at the message, choosing his words carefully. "No, I think you're hurt. There's a difference. Hurt things are broken things. No, broken things don't heal, hurt things do." Another long pause, then, "I want to believe that." "Then believe it." "It's hard." "I know." He set the phone down and went to the kitchen, made tea even though he didn't really want it, just needed something to do with his hands. His phone buzzed again. "I'm scared," Victoria had written. Of what? Of trying to change and failing, of opening up and getting hurt again, of wanting things I can't have. Ethan thought about Sarah, about the last conversation they'd had before she got too sick to talk. She'd made him promise not to shut down, not to let grief turn him into a ghost. He'd promised, even though he had no idea how to keep that promise. He typed, "Being scared means you care about something. That's not a bad thing." "Feels bad." "Yeah, but it's better than feeling nothing." "Is it?" "Ask me again in 6 months." She sent back a laughing emoji, then, "I should let you go, it's late." "Good night, Victoria." "Good night, Ethan." He finished his tea, washed the cup, and stood in the quiet apartment thinking about broken things and hurt things and the difference between the two. Thinking about Victoria sitting in her car alone, about Mason asking why he didn't smile anymore, about the life he'd built that felt simultaneously too small and impossibly overwhelming. His phone buzzed one more time. "Victoria, thank you for being my friend. I didn't know I needed one until I had one." Ethan smiled and typed back, "Same." He went to bed but didn't sleep for a long time, just lay there in the dark, listening to the city outside his window, thinking about all the ways a person could be hurt and all the ways they might heal. The next morning, Mason came home early, bursting through the door at 8 a.m. with stories about staying up late watching movies with his aunt. Ethan made pancakes while Mason narrated the entire plot of 3 different cartoons, and somewhere in the middle of breakfast, his phone buzzed. "Victoria, I called my brother. We're having lunch next week when I fly to Seattle." "Ethan, that's great. I'm terrified." "You should be. It means it matters." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I just know what it's like to be scared and do it anyway." Mason looked up from his pancakes. "Is that Victoria?" "Yeah." "Can she come over? I want to show her my new dinosaur book." Ethan texted, "Mason wants to know if you want to see his dinosaur book." The response was immediate. "I'd love to. Give me 20 minutes. She showed up in her new sweatpants and an old t-shirt, her hair in a messy bun, looking nothing like a billionaire CEO and everything like a person. Mason dragged her to the couch and spent an hour explaining the difference between a stegosaurus and an ankylosaurus while she listened with genuine interest. Ethan watched from the kitchen, washing dishes and thinking about hurt things that healed, about friends who showed up when you needed them, about the way life could surprise you if you were brave enough to let it. Victoria caught his eye and smiled, and he smiled back. It wasn't much, but it was a start. 3 weeks after Victoria flew to Seattle, she called Ethan at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. He was half asleep on the couch, a basketball game playing on mute, when his phone lit up. "Hey," he answered, sitting up. "You okay?" "I'm at the airport." Her voice was thick, like she'd been crying. "My flight got delayed. I'm sitting here in this terrible airport bar drinking wine that tastes like paint thinner, and I needed to hear a friendly voice." "How did it go with your brother?" "Awful. Amazing. I don't know." She let out a shaky laugh. "We had lunch the first day and it was so awkward I wanted to die." All these long silences where we both tried to think of something to say. Then he asked me why I really came, and I just told him the truth, that I'd built this whole life and realized I had nobody in it, that I missed him. What did he say? He cried. Just sat there in this restaurant crying while I panicked because I didn't know what to do. Victoria's voice cracked. Then he told me he's been trying to call me for 3 years, that he left messages, sent emails, even showed up at my office once. But my assistant kept turning him away because I told her I didn't want to be disturbed by personal matters. Ethan winced. You didn't know? I had no idea. I thought he'd just written me off, moved on with his life. She took a shaky breath. We spent the next 4 days together, really together. He showed me his house, introduced me to his wife and kids. I have 2 nieces I'd never met, Ethan, 5 and 7 years old, and I didn't even know they existed. That must have been hard. It destroyed me. The older one, Emma, she asked why I'd never visited before, and her mom gave me this look like she was trying to decide if I was worth her daughter's time. Victoria's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I wanted to run, just get on a plane and pretend it never happened, but I stayed, and we talked, really talked, about our parents, about the company, about why I disappeared into work after my divorce. What did he say? That he understood, that he watched me become someone else after I married David, someone harder, more focused, less human. He said it was like watching a stranger wear his sister's face. She was definitely crying now. And he's right, I did become someone else, someone I don't even recognize anymore. Ethan heard the announcement in the background, something about boarding zones. When does your flight leave? 2 hours. If it's not delayed again. She sniffled. I'm sorry for calling so late. I just didn't know who else to talk to. Don't apologize. I'm glad you called. Are you? Her voice was small, uncertain. I feel like I keep dumping all my problems on you. That's not fair. Victoria, you watched my kid throw pudding at the ceiling. I think we're past worrying about fair. That got a real laugh out of her. That was the best day I'd had in years. Same. They talked until her boarding call, Victoria filling him in on every detail of the trip, how her brother's wife had warmed up to her by the 3rd day, how her nieces had insisted she read them bedtime stories, and she'd had to Google what kids their age even liked because she had no idea, how her brother had hugged her at the airport and made her promise to visit again soon. I cried the whole flight here, Victoria admitted. The poor woman next to me kept offering me tissues and asking if I was okay. I didn't know how to explain that I was crying because I was happy, because for the first time in years I felt like I belonged somewhere. That's good, Victoria. That's really good. I know, but it's also terrifying, because now I know what I've been missing, and I can't unknow it. You don't have to unknow it, you just have to keep moving forward. Is that what you do, after Sarah? Ethan thought about that. Not at first. At first I just survived, got through each day without completely falling apart. But eventually, surviving turned into living. It happened so slowly, I didn't even notice until one day I realized I'd laughed at something Mason said and hadn't felt guilty about it. How long did that take? 2 years, give or take. 2 years, Victoria repeated quietly. That's a long time. Grief doesn't follow a schedule. Neither does healing. Her flight was called again, final boarding. I have to go, but Ethan? Yeah? Thank you for picking up, for listening, for being exactly what I needed. Anytime. She hung up, and Ethan sat there in the dark apartment, the basketball game still playing silently on TV. He thought about Victoria crying in an airport bar, about her brother's family, about all the years she'd lost to work and ambition, and the belief that success could fill the holes inside her. His phone buzzed. Victoria. I land at 6 a.m., coffee at 10. Ethan smiled. See you then. But when 10 o'clock came around the next morning, Victoria wasn't at the coffee shop. Ethan waited 20 minutes, texted her twice, got no response. He was starting to worry when his phone finally rang. I'm sorry, Victoria said immediately. I got home and crashed. Just woke up. You okay? Just exhausted. Can we reschedule? Sure. Tomorrow? Actually, she hesitated. Can I ask you something? Always. Are you free Saturday, like the whole day? Ethan mentally ran through his schedule. Mason's with his aunt. Why? I want to show you something. It's a drive, about 2 hours outside the city. I'll pick you up at 8. What is it? A surprise. Do you trust me? He thought about Victoria showing up at his door barefoot and broken, about her covered in pudding, laughing on his floor, about the way she listened to Mason talk about dinosaurs like it was the most important thing in the world. Yeah, he said. I trust you. Saturday morning came cold and gray, the kind of November day that promised winter. Ethan was waiting outside his building when a car pulled up that definitely wasn't Victoria's usual black sedan. This was older, a blue Honda that had seen better days. Victoria rolled down the window, grinning. Get in. What happened to the fancy car? I sold it, bought this instead, much more practical. Us. Ethan climbed in, noting the worn seats and the check engine light that was definitely on. Does it even run? Mostly, there's a weird rattling sound around 40 miles an hour, but the mechanic says it's fine. That's not reassuring. I'm learning to live with imperfection. She pulled away from the curb. There's coffee in the cup holder and bagels in the back. They drove out of the city, Victoria navigating with a paper map because she'd deleted most of the apps from her phone. My therapist suggested a digital detox, she explained. Turns out I'm addicted to email. You think? I know, but I'm working on it. Haven't checked my inbox in 3 days. How's that going? Terrible. I have stress dreams about missed meetings and angry investors, but also liberating, like cutting off a limb you didn't realize was weighing you down. The city gave way to suburbs, then to actual countryside. Trees stripped bare by fall, fields gone brown. The occasional farm with cows huddled against the cold. Victoria drove with the window cracked, letting in freezing air, and hummed along to the radio. You seem different, Ethan observed. Different how? Lighter, like you're not carrying as much weight. She smiled. I've been working on letting things go. The company's still there, still running. Turns out the world doesn't end when I'm not micromanaging every decision. Shocking, right? My VP called yesterday to tell me they'd closed a major deal. Didn't need my input, didn't need my approval, just did it. She glanced at him. I should have felt anxious about that. Instead, I felt relieved. They talked about her trip to Seattle, about her nieces and how Emma had made her a friendship bracelet that Victoria now wore every day. About her brother suggesting she move closer, maybe get a place in Seattle, and split her time between cities. Are you considering it? Ethan asked. Maybe. I don't know. Everything I built is in the city, but everything I've been missing is in Seattle. She turned onto a smaller road, gravel crunching under the tires. My therapist says I'm afraid of making the wrong choice, that I'm paralyzed by the idea that I might regret it. What do you think? I think any choice is better than no choice. I've spent 3 years standing still, afraid to move in any direction. That's its own kind of prison. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the landscape getting more rural. Then Victoria turned down a long driveway that led to an old farmhouse, white paint peeling, wraparound porch sagging slightly. Where are we? Ethan asked. My grandmother's house. Or it was. She died 5 years ago and left it to me. Victoria parked in front of the house. I haven't been here since the funeral. Couldn't bring myself to sell it, but couldn't face coming back either. They got out, and Victoria pulled a key from her pocket. The front door stuck, and Ethan had to help her shoulder it open. Inside, the house was frozen in time. Furniture covered in sheets, family photos on the walls, the smell of dust and memories. Victoria walked through slowly, running her fingers along surfaces. I spent every summer here as a kid. My grandmother taught me to paint, actually. We'd set up easels on the back porch and paint the garden. Is that why you started again? Partly. I'd forgotten how much I loved it, how much I loved her. She stopped in front of a photo, a young Victoria grinning beside an older woman. She died right before my divorce. I was so buried in work that I missed her last few months. Didn't even make it to the hospital before she was gone. I'm sorry. I never forgave myself for that. Added it to the list of things I'd sacrificed for the company. Victoria turned to face him. But being here now, I realized she wouldn't have wanted me to carry that guilt. She would have wanted me to remember the good parts, the summers, the painting, the way she made everything feel safe. They explored the rest of the house. Victoria showed him the room she'd stayed in, still decorated with her childhood drawings. The kitchen where her grandmother had taught her to bake, though Victoria admitted she'd never been any good at it. The back porch where they'd painted, now rotting and in need of serious repair. "Why did you bring me here?" Ethan asked. Victoria leaned against the porch railing, looking out at the overgrown garden. "Because I'm thinking about keeping it, fixing it up. Maybe spending weekends here, away from the city and all the noise." She glanced at him. "But I wanted someone else's opinion, someone who'd tell me the truth instead of what they think I want to hear." "You want my honest opinion?" "Always." Ethan looked around. The house was a mess, would need thousands of dollars and months of work to make it livable. But it had good bones. And more importantly, it had heart. "I think you should do it," he said. "Not because it makes financial sense or fits into some strategic plan, but because it matters to you, and things that matter are worth fighting for." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple, but it's important. There's a difference." She wiped at her eyes, laughing. "I cry more in a week now than I did in the entire previous decade." "That's probably healthy." "My therapist agrees with you, says I'm finally processing emotions instead of burying them." They spent the rest of the afternoon walking the property, Victoria pointing out where the garden used to be, where she'd had a tire swing, where her grandmother had kept chickens. She talked about her plans for restoration, how she'd hire local contractors, maybe come out here on weekends to help with the work. "You know how to renovate a house?" Ethan asked. "No, but I didn't know how to run a company either, and I figured that out." "That's not exactly the same thing." "No, but it's the same principle. You learn as you go, make mistakes, try again." On the drive back, Victoria was quiet, lost in thought. Ethan watched the landscape slide past, thinking about old houses and new beginnings and the way grief could hollow you out or crack you open. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said finally. "Sure." "Do you think I'm running away? From the company, from the city, from everything I built?" Ethan considered this. "I think you're running toward something. There's a difference." "What am I running toward?" "Yourself. The person you were before you became Victoria Hale, CEO, before the company and the divorce and all the things that made you forget who you actually are." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "That's what my therapist said." "Your therapist is smart. And expensive." "You mentioned." They got back to the city around 6, the sky already dark. Victoria pulled up in front of Ethan's building and put the car in park. "Thank you," she said, "for coming with me, for not thinking I'm crazy." "You're not crazy. You're just figuring things out." "Is there a difference?" "Yeah, crazy doesn't ask for help." She smiled. "Are you calling me sane?" "I'm calling you brave." Something shifted in her expression. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time, or maybe seeing him clearly for the first time. "Ethan." "Yeah?" "I need to tell you something." His stomach tightened. "Okay." "I've been thinking a lot about what I want, what actually matters to me." She took a breath. "And I realized that I value this, us, our friendship, the way you don't treat me like I'm made of glass or like I'm some untouchable CEO. You just treat me like a person. You are a person." "I know, but you're the first person in years to actually see that." She gripped the steering wheel. "And I don't want to mess this up by wanting more than you're willing to give." Ethan's heart was pounding. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I have feelings for you. Real feelings, not the kind that make sense strategically or fit into a 5-year plan. The messy, complicated kind that terrify me." She wouldn't look at him. "And I know that's probably the last thing you want to hear. You've been so clear that you're just trying to be a good dad, that you're not looking for anything complicated. So I'm not asking for anything. I just needed to be honest." Ethan sat there, his mind racing. He thought about Sarah, about the promise he'd made to not shut down, about Victoria covered in pudding, laughing on his floor, about the way Mason's face lit up when she walked in the door. "Victoria," he said carefully, "look at me." She turned, and he saw the fear in her eyes, the vulnerability, the raw hope she was trying desperately to hide. "I have feelings for you too," he said. "I've been trying not to, telling myself it's too complicated, too risky, that I've got enough on my plate without adding this. But the truth is, I think about you constantly. When something happens, you're the first person I want to tell, and that scares the hell out of me." "Why?" "Because I've already lost one person I loved. I don't know if I can survive losing another. Victoria reached across the console, took his hand. I can't promise I won't hurt you. I'm a mess, Ethan. I'm just starting to figure out who I am and what I want. I'll probably screw this up in 100 different ways. I'm a mess too. I work a dead-end job and live in a tiny apartment and have a 4-year-old who's my entire world. I can't offer you the life you're used to. I don't want the life I'm used to. That's the whole point. She squeezed his hand. I want something real, something that matters. And you matter to me. They sat there in the car, hands clasped, neither quite sure what happened next. Then Ethan leaned across the console and kissed her. It was awkward, their noses bumping, the gear shift digging into his ribs. But it was also perfect in its imperfection. When they pulled apart, Victoria was smiling. That was terrible. Objectively awful. Want to try again? Yeah. The second kiss was better, slower, softer, less desperate. When they finally broke apart, Victoria was crying again. Happy tears? Ethan asked. I think so. I'm not actually sure. This is all very new. For me too. They sat there in the dark car, the engine running, heat blasting, just holding hands and trying to process what had just happened. I should go, Ethan said finally. Mason's aunt is dropping him off in an hour. Okay. But Victoria? Yeah? I'm glad you told me. I'm glad we're doing this, whatever this is. She smiled. Me too, even though I'm terrified. That's how you know it matters. He got out of the car and walked to his building, looking back once to see Victoria still sitting there watching him. He waved, and she waved back, then pulled away. Upstairs in his apartment, Ethan paced for 20 minutes, unable to sit still. His phone buzzed. Victoria. I just sat in my car outside your building for 10 minutes like a creep. I didn't want to leave. Ethan smiled. I watched you from the window, also like a creep. We're quite a pair. Yeah, we really are. Mason came home full of stories about the zoo, and Ethan listened with half his attention while the other half replayed the kiss in the car. That night after Mason was asleep, Victoria called. I can't stop thinking about it, she said without preamble. Me neither. Is this crazy? We've known each other less than 2 months. Probably. But you're still willing to try? Are you? I asked first. Ethan laughed. Yeah, I'm willing to try. Scared out of my mind, but willing. Same. He heard her moving around, probably pacing. My therapist is going to have a field day with this. You're going to tell your therapist? Are you kidding? This is the most interesting thing that's happened to me. She'll probably write a paper about it. They talked until midnight about nothing and everything. About how they'd tell Mason, whether it was too soon, what this even meant. Neither had any answers, but somehow that was okay. I should let you sleep, Victoria said finally. Probably. But I don't want to hang up. Me neither. They stayed on the phone in comfortable silence, just breathing, just being. Finally, Ethan said, We're being ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. Good night, Victoria. Good night, Ethan. He lay in bed afterwards, staring at the ceiling, his mind spinning. This was dangerous territory. Getting involved with someone, opening himself up to the possibility of loss again. But he thought about Sarah's last words, about not shutting down, about letting himself live. His phone buzzed one more time. Victoria. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Ethan. Thank you for knocking on my door. The next morning, Mason noticed something was different immediately. Dad, you're smiling again. Am I? Like you did with Mama. The big smile. Ethan knelt down. I have to tell you something, buddy. Mason's eyes went wide. What? Victoria and I are going to try being more than friends, like dating. Is that okay with you? Mason thought about this very seriously. Then he said, Does this mean she'll come over more? Probably. And we can do more science? Definitely. Then it's okay. He paused. Dad? Yeah? Does this mean you won't be sad anymore? Ethan pulled him into a hug. I'll probably still be sad sometimes, but I think I'll also be happy. Is that okay? Mason hugged him back, fierce and tight. Mama would want you to be happy. Yeah, bud, I think she would. They spent the day at the park, and Ethan texted Victoria photos of Mason on the swings. She sent back pictures of her grandmother's house, contractors she was meeting with, paint samples she was considering. This was new territory for both of them. Uncertain, terrifying, full of potential for disaster, but also full of hope. And sometimes, hope was enough. The first fight happened 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning that started normal and went sideways fast. Victoria had stayed over the night before, sleeping on the couch because Mason was still adjusting to the idea of her being around more. She'd woken up early to leave before he got up, but Ethan had convinced her to stay for breakfast. "He'll be fine," Ethan said, cracking eggs into a pan. "We talked about this. He knows you're here." Knowing and seeing are different things. "Victoria, relax." But when Mason shuffled into the kitchen and saw her sitting at the table in yesterday's clothes, his face crumpled. He didn't say anything, just turned around and went back to his room, slamming the door. Ethan put down the spatula. "I'll talk to him. Maybe I should go." "No, stay, please." He found Mason curled up on his bed, Jeffrey the giraffe clutched to his chest. "Hey, bud, what's wrong?" "Nothing." "Doesn't seem like nothing." Mason's voice was small, muffled by the pillow. "Is Victoria going to be my new mom?" Ethan's stomach dropped. Nobody's replacing your mom. Ever. Then why is she here all the time? "Because I like her, and I thought you liked her too." "I do like her." Mason sat up, his eyes wet. "But what if you like her more than me?" "Mason." Ethan sat on the bed, pulled him close. "I could never like anyone more than you. You're my son. That doesn't change, no matter who else is in our lives." "Promise?" "I promise. You will always be the most important person to me. Always." Mason wiped his nose on his sleeve. "Can I still have breakfast with you? Just us?" "Yeah, of course." Ethan went back to the kitchen. Victoria was already putting on her coat. "I heard I should go." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. He needs you right now, not me." She kissed his cheek quickly. "Call me later." After she left, Ethan made pancakes and sat with Mason at the table. They ate in silence for a while. Then Mason said, "I'm sorry I was mean." "You weren't mean. You were honest. That's different." "Do you really like Victoria?" "Yeah, I do." "More than Mama?" Ethan set down his fork. "I loved your mama more than anything, and when she died, I thought I'd never feel that way about anyone again. Victoria's different. I like her for different reasons, but that doesn't mean I love your mama any less." Mason pushed pancake around his plate. "Emma at school says her dad got a new wife and now he doesn't see her anymore. That's not going to happen to us. You're stuck with me, kiddo, whether you like it or not." "I like it." "Good, because I like it too." They finished breakfast, and Ethan dropped Mason at school before heading to work. He texted Victoria. "Sorry about this morning." Her response came immediately. "Don't apologize. He's protecting what matters to him. I respect that. He'll come around." "And if he doesn't?" Ethan stared at the message. He hadn't let himself think about that possibility. "Then we'll figure it out." 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then, "Can we talk? Tonight?" "Sure. Your place or mine?" "Neutral territory." "The coffee shop at 8?" His stomach tightened. Neutral territory meant serious conversation. "I'll be there." Work dragged. Ethan fixed a broken dryer, unclogged 3 toilets, and replaced the light bulbs in the lobby while his mind spun through worst-case scenarios. By the time 8 o'clock came, he'd convinced himself Victoria was going to end things. She was already at the coffee shop when he arrived, sitting at their usual table with 2 cups already ordered. She looked tired, shadows under her eyes. "Hey," he said, sliding into the chair. "Hey." They sat in awkward silence. Finally, Victoria said, "I've been thinking about this morning, about Mason's reaction. He's 4. He doesn't understand. He understands perfectly. His whole world is you, and I'm a threat to that." "You're not a threat." "I am, though. Not intentionally, but I am." She wrapped her hands around her cup. "And I've been thinking about what I'm doing, whether it's fair to either of you." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm a mess, Ethan. I'm still figuring out who I am and what I want. I'm in therapy twice a week. I wake up in the middle of the night panicking about things that happened 5 years ago. I cry at random moments for no reason." She finally looked at him. "You don't need that in your life. You've got enough to deal with." "So what, you're ending this?" "I don't know. Maybe I should. Maybe it's the right thing to do." Ethan felt anger flare, hot and unexpected. Don't do that. Do what? Make decisions for me. You're scared, so you're running. Again. Her eyes flashed. I'm not running. I'm being realistic. Your son is 4 years old and terrified I'm going to replace his mother. How is this supposed to work? We figure it out. Together. Like we've been doing. But what if we can't? What if this just hurts him more? What if it doesn't? What if it shows him that it's okay to let people in? That his dad can be happy and still love his mom? Victoria stood up abruptly. I need air. She walked out, and Ethan followed her into the cold night. She was pacing on the sidewalk, arms wrapped around herself. I'm terrified of screwing this up, she said without looking at him. Of hurting Mason. Of hurting you. Of waking up one day and realizing I'm not cut out for this. You think I'm not terrified? I'm letting someone into my life for the first time since Sarah died. Do you know how scary that is? Then maybe we're both being stupid. Maybe. But I'd rather be stupid and trying than smart and alone. She stopped pacing. What if Mason never accepts me? Then we'll deal with it. But you don't get to bail before we even try. I'm not bailing. Yes, you are. You're doing exactly what you always do. Something gets hard, so you shut down and walk away. That's not fair, isn't it? You shut down after the miscarriage, after your divorce, after your grandmother died. And now, the second Mason shows any resistance, you're ready to run. Victoria's face went white. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? You told me yourself. You spent 15 years running from your feelings, and the second you started facing them, your whole life fell apart. I get it. It's terrifying, but you can't keep running forever. She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be the person you need me to be. I don't need you to be anyone except yourself. But what if myself isn't enough? Ethan stepped closer, took her face in his hands. Victoria, look at me. You are enough. Messy, scared, crying at random moments, you is enough. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be here. She broke then, collapsing against him, sobbing into his chest. He held her while people walked past, while cars drove by, while the world kept moving around them. I'm sorry, she gasped. I'm so sorry. You're right. I was running. I just got scared. I know, but you can't keep doing that. Not if this is going to work. I know. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I'm a disaster. Yeah, but you're my disaster. She laughed wetly. That's possibly the least romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I'm not good at romance. No, but you're good at truth. She took a shaky breath. I want this to work. I want to figure out how to be part of your life, part of Mason's life. I just don't know how. Neither do I. But we'll learn. They walked back to his building, hands clasped, neither speaking. Upstairs, Mason was asleep, and Ethan's sister-in-law was watching TV. Everything okay? She asked when she saw Victoria's tear-stained face. Yeah, Ethan said. Just working through some stuff. After she left, Victoria sat on the couch while Ethan checked on Mason. The kid was sprawled sideways across the bed, Jeffrey clutched in one hand, completely at peace. He's out cold, Ethan reported, coming back to the living room. Victoria was staring at the drawings on the wall. How do you do this? Raise a kid alone? Badly, most of the time. I'm serious. Ethan sat beside her. You just do it, one day at a time. You make mistakes, you apologize. You try to do better tomorrow. Do you ever feel like you're failing him? Every single day. How do you live with that? Because the alternative is giving up, and that's not an option. He looked at her. You asked, what if you're not enough? But here's what I know. Mason doesn't need perfect. He needs present. He needs people who show up, who try, who admit when they're wrong and work to fix it. That's what matters. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, my therapist told me something last week. She said I've been trying to earn love my whole life, through achievement, through success, through being the best at everything. But love doesn't work like that. No, it doesn't. So how does it work? You just be yourself, flawed, messy, imperfect yourself. And you let people see you anyway. That's terrifying. Yeah, but it's the only way it works. She leaned against him and they sat like that for a while, just breathing together. Finally, Victoria said, I need to figure out how to talk to Mason, really talk to him, not as the woman dating his dad, but as a person. Okay, how? I don't know. Maybe I could take him somewhere, just the two of us? Ethan hesitated. Are you sure? No, but I need to try. The next Saturday, Victoria picked Mason up for what she'd called an adventure. Ethan watched from the window as they walked to her car, Mason chattering while Victoria listened with obvious nerves. His phone buzzed 2 hours later. Victoria. We're at the Children's Museum. He's explaining dinosaurs to other kids. It's possibly the cutest thing I've ever seen. Ethan. How's it going? Victoria. I have no idea what I'm doing, but he hasn't asked to go home yet, so that's good. 3 hours later, they came back. Mason was wearing a new dinosaur t-shirt and carrying a bag full of museum souvenirs, talking a mile a minute about everything they'd seen. And Victoria bought me this book about pterodactyls. And did you know they're not actually dinosaurs? They're flying reptiles. It's completely different, Dad. That's really cool, bud. Mason ran off to his room to examine his treasures, leaving Ethan and Victoria alone in the kitchen. How did it really go? Ethan asked. Victoria slumped against the counter. Exhausting. How do parents keep up with that energy level? Caffeine and denial. He asked me about my mom. What did you say? The truth. That she lives far away and we're not very close. And he said that's sad and maybe I should call her. Victoria smiled. Out of the mouths of children, right? Are you going to? I don't know. Maybe. My therapist thinks it's a good idea. She looked at Ethan. He also asked if I was going to marry you. Ethan froze. What did you say? I said I didn't know. That we were still figuring things out. And he said that's okay because his dad needs to figure things out too sometimes. He's too smart for his own good. He's wonderful, Ethan. Really wonderful. You're doing an amazing job with him. I'm doing my best. That's all any of us can do. Mason appeared in the doorway. Victoria, do you want to see my rock collection? She glanced at Ethan, who nodded. I'd love to. An hour later, Ethan found them on Mason's bedroom floor, surrounded by rocks and fossils, Victoria listening intently while Mason explained the geological history of each specimen with complete 4-year-old confidence. That night, after Victoria left and Mason was asleep, Ethan sat on the couch and thought about what it meant to build a life. Not the life you planned, but the life that actually showed up. Messy, complicated, full of people who didn't fit perfectly, but tried anyway. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Thank you for trusting me with him today. Ethan. Thank you for showing up. Victoria. I'm going to keep showing up, even when it's scary, especially when it's scary. Ethan. Good, because we're not going anywhere. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Mason had good days and bad days, moments where he was excited to see Victoria, and moments where he clung to Ethan and wouldn't let go. Victoria struggled with finding her place, with knowing when to step in and when to step back. But slowly, carefully, they figured it out. Victoria started coming to Mason's school events, sitting next to Ethan at the holiday concert where Mason forgot all the words and just stood there waving. She learned to make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, though hers were objectively terrible. She showed up for bedtime stories, sitting quietly while Ethan read, just being present. And Mason, gradually, let her in. Not as a replacement for his mother, but as someone new. Someone who brought her own kind of love. 2 months after their fight outside the coffee shop, Victoria invited them both to see her grandmother's house. She'd been working on it every weekend, and the progress was visible. Fresh paint, new porch boards, the garden starting to come back to life. It's not finished, she said as they walked through, but it's getting there. Mason ran from room to room, declaring each one his favorite. Victoria showed Ethan the back porch where she'd set up a painting studio, canvases stacked against the wall. These are good, Ethan said, studying a landscape of the garden. They're getting better. Still not great, but better. You're being too hard on yourself. My therapist says the same thing. I'm working on it. They had a picnic lunch on the back porch, Mason chattering about school, while Ethan and Victoria exchanged glances over his head. Later, while Mason explored the yard, they sat together on the porch steps. I've been thinking, Victoria said, about Seattle. And? I'm going to move there. Part-time, at least. Get a place near my brother. Spend more time with my nieces. She looked at him. But I want to keep this house too. Keep both lives. Is that crazy? No, it's smart. The commute's going to be rough, but I think it's important. Having family again, being an aunt, actually being present for the people who matter. I think that's great. She turned to face him. I want you to know that this, us, it's part of that. You and Mason matter to me. And I know it's only been a few months, and I know we're still figuring things out, but I need you to know that I'm committed to this, to trying. I know. Do you? Because I feel like I keep messing up. We both mess up. That's part of it. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. My therapist says I'm doing better, that I'm learning to be present instead of always running ahead to the next thing. Are you? I think so. It's hard. My instinct is still to plan everything, to strategize, to turn life into a project I can manage. But I'm learning to just be, to sit with uncertainty, to accept that I don't have all the answers. Mason ran up to them out of breath. There's a frog in the garden. Come see. They spent the rest of the afternoon chasing frogs and pulling weeds and just existing together in the space Victoria was slowly reclaiming. As the sun started to set, they drove back to the city, Mason falling asleep in the back seat. Thank you for today, Victoria said quietly. You don't have to keep thanking me. I know, but I'm grateful for all of this. She glanced in the rearview mirror at Mason. I never thought I'd have this. A family, even a messy, complicated one. Is that what we are? A family? I think so. Maybe not a traditional one, but definitely a family. That night, after Mason was in bed, Victoria stayed. Not on the couch this time, but in Ethan's room, in his bed, both of them too nervous to do anything but hold each other. This is weird, Victoria whispered. Which part? All of it. Being here. Being with you. Feeling like I might actually deserve this. You do deserve it. I'm working on believing that. They fell asleep tangled together, and when Ethan woke up at 3 a.m., Victoria was crying softly. Hey, he said. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm just happy. Is that stupid? No, it's perfect. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For something to go wrong. Maybe nothing will go wrong. That's terrifying in a completely different way. Ethan pulled her closer. Welcome to the mess. I'm starting to like the mess. Good. Because it doesn't get cleaner. She laughed, and he felt it vibrate through both of them. They lay there in the dark, two broken people who'd somehow found each other, and for once, the brokenness didn't feel like a flaw. It felt like the foundation of something real. The next morning, Mason wandered into the kitchen and found them both there. He stopped, processing this, then climbed onto Victoria's lap without comment. Can we have dinosaur pancakes? I'll make them, Ethan said. No, let Victoria try. She needs practice. Victoria looked panicked. I'm really not good at... I'll help you, Mason said solemnly. I'm an expert. So they made pancakes together, Mason directing while Victoria fumbled with the batter, Ethan supervising from the side. The pancakes came out lumpy and vaguely dinosaur-shaped, but Mason declared them perfect. They ate breakfast together, the three of them, and it felt natural. Not forced, not awkward, just real. Later, after Mason went to play in his room, Victoria said, Is this okay? Me being here like this? Yeah, it's okay. Because if it's too much, too fast... Victoria, stop. It's okay. She nodded, but he could see the fear still there, the waiting for disaster. He understood it. Felt it himself sometimes, late at night when the apartment was quiet and the grief snuck back in. But he was learning, slowly, that fear didn't mean you stopped. It just meant you cared about something enough to be scared of losing it. The months passed. Winter came, then spring. Victoria split her time between the city and Seattle, between her company and her family, between her old life and the new one she was building. It wasn't seamless. She struggled with delegation, with letting go of control, with trusting that the company wouldn't collapse without her constant oversight. But she kept trying. Ethan watched her change in small ways. The way she laughed more easily. The way she stopped checking her phone every 5 minutes. The way she'd show up at his apartment with paint under her fingernails and stories about her nieces. One Saturday in April, she arrived with news. I'm stepping down as CEO. Ethan looked up from where he was helping Mason build a blanket fort. What? Not leaving the company? just stepping back from the day-to-day. My VP is taking over as CEO. I'll stay on as chair of the board, but I won't be running everything anymore. How do you feel about that? Terrified, relieved, both. She sat on the floor next to them. My therapist says it's healthy, that I'm finally learning to let go. Are you? I'm trying. It's hard. But I realized something. I built that company because I thought it would fill the empty places inside me. But it never did. And it never will. Because you can't build yourself out of loneliness. Mason looked up from the fort. What's loneliness? It's when you feel like nobody understands you, Victoria said. When you're surrounded by people but still feel alone. That sounds sad. It is. But I'm not lonely anymore. Because of us? Yeah, because of you. Mason beamed and went back to his fort. Victoria met Ethan's eyes and he saw the truth there. She was still scared, still figuring things out, still carrying wounds that might never fully heal. But she was here, present, trying. That summer they all went to the farmhouse together. Victoria had finished most of the renovations, and the place looked like a home again. Mason ran through the garden while Ethan and Victoria sat on the porch. I'm thinking about proposing to you, Ethan said suddenly. Victoria choked on her lemonade. What? Not now. I'm not asking now, I'm just telling you I'm thinking about it. That's possibly the strangest non-proposal I've ever heard. I'm not good at this stuff. Clearly. But she was smiling. Why are you telling me? Because we don't do secrets, and because I wanted to know how you'd feel about it. Victoria set down her glass. Ask me in a year. A year? Yeah, let's get through a year first, a full cycle of seasons. See if we can actually do this. And then? And then ask me properly. Not just blurting it out on a porch. Ethan laughed. Fair enough. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Mason chase butterflies. Then Victoria said, I love you, you know. It was the first time either of them had said it out loud. Ethan felt his chest tighten. I love you too. Even though I'm a mess? Especially because you're a mess. That doesn't make sense. Sure it does. Your mess matches my mess. She leaned her head on his shoulder. We're quite a pair. Yeah, we really are. That night, after Mason was asleep in one of the upstairs bedrooms, Ethan and Victoria sat on the porch under the stars. The air smelled like summer grass and possibility. Do you ever think about Sarah? Victoria asked quietly. Every day? Does it bother you that I ask? No, she's part of my story. Part of what made me who I am. He looked at Victoria. And she'd like you, I think. She'd appreciate that you're real, that you don't pretend to have it all figured out. I definitely don't have it figured out. Nobody does. That's the secret they don't tell you. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then, I think about the baby sometimes. The one I lost. Wonder what they would have been like. That's natural. I used to think it was my fault, like my body failed some fundamental test. She took a shaky breath. My therapist helped me understand that it wasn't anyone's fault. Sometimes things just happen, but knowing that doesn't make it hurt less. No, it doesn't. Do you think the pain ever goes away from losing someone? Ethan thought about this. No, but it changes, gets softer around the edges, becomes part of you instead of consuming you. He took her hand. You learn to carry it, and some days it's lighter than others. I'm still learning. We both are. They sat there for a long time, two people learning to live with loss and love simultaneously, to hold grief and joy in the same hands. It wasn't neat or simple or anything like what either of them had planned, but it was real. And real was enough. A year later, almost to the day, Ethan proposed properly. Not on the porch, but in his apartment, in the kitchen where they'd first shared coffee at 2 a.m. Mason helped him plan it, insisting they needed dinosaur decorations because Victoria liked dinosaurs now too. She said yes before he even finished asking. They got married 6 months after that. A small ceremony at the farmhouse with just Mason, Victoria's brother and his family, and a handful of close friends. Mason was the ring bearer and took his job very seriously. Victoria cried through the entire ceremony, happy tears that she didn't try to hide. At the reception, Mason pulled on Ethan's sleeve. Dad? Yeah, bud? Are you happy? Are you... Ethan looked around. At Victoria, laughing with her nieces. at the farmhouse glowing in the sunset, at the life they'd built from broken pieces and brave choices. "Yeah," he said, "I'm happy." "Good. Mama would be happy too." "I think you're right." That night, after everyone had gone home and Mason was asleep upstairs, Ethan and Victoria sat on the porch steps. The same steps where they'd sat a year ago, where he'd told her he was thinking about proposing. "We did it," Victoria said. "Did what?" "Made it through a year, a full cycle. We survived." "We did more than survive. Yeah, we actually lived." She leaned against him. "Thank you." "For what?" "For opening your door that night. For not turning me away when I showed up broken and desperate." "You weren't broken. You were hurt." "There's a difference?" "Yeah. Broken things can't heal. Hurt things can." She smiled. "You've told me that before." "It's still true." They sat there as the stars came out, and Ethan thought about the journey that had led them here. From that first night when Victoria knocked on his door, barefoot and shattered, to this moment, married and building something new. It hadn't been easy. There had been fights and tears and moments when they both wanted to quit. But they'd kept showing up, kept trying, kept choosing each other and the messy, imperfect life they were creating. "What are you thinking about?" Victoria asked. "Just that I'm glad you knocked." "Me too." Even though it was terrifying, especially because it was terrifying, that's how I knew it mattered. Inside the farmhouse, through the open window, they could hear Mason talking in his sleep about dinosaurs. Normal kid stuff. Normal life. And that's what it came down to, Ethan realized. Not the grand gestures or the perfect moments, but the everyday choice to be present, to show up, to keep the kitchen light on for people who might need it. Because the truth that nobody tells you is this: life isn't about having all the answers or being perfectly healed or waiting until you're ready. It's about being brave enough to open the door when someone knocks, brave enough to knock on doors when you need help, brave enough to sit with people in their mess and let them sit with you in yours. Victoria had learned that. So had Ethan. And they were teaching it to Mason, showing him that it was okay to be hurt and heal simultaneously. Okay to carry grief and joy in the same breath. Okay to build a life from broken pieces and call it beautiful anyway. The kitchen light inside the farmhouse was still on, a small beacon in the darkness. Ethan had left it on out of habit, the same way he left it on in his apartment. A signal that someone was home, that help was available, that you didn't have to face the darkness alone. Victoria noticed it and smiled. "You always leave that light on." "Yeah." "Why?" "Because someone might need it." "Did anyone ever show up besides me?" "No, but that's not the point." "What is the point?" Ethan thought about it, about all the nights he'd left that light burning, hoping it might matter to someone, about the morning Victoria had shown up and changed everything. "The point is trying," he said finally. "The point is leaving the light on even when you're not sure anyone will see it, because maybe they will, and maybe that will make all the difference." Victoria took his hand and they sat there in the quiet of the summer night, two people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to keep the lights on together. Inside, Mason stirred in his sleep, safe and loved and surrounded by imperfect people who were trying their best. That was all any of them could do. Try, show up, be present, keep the lights on. And sometimes, when you were very lucky, that was enough.